Hi, howdy, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a new series that I'm very excited about. I have attempted making this exact series about 7 times in the past, and I've never been able to actually get it right. But we're going to be doing a show that I like to call Blake's Bets, and basically what this series is going to be is every single week I'm going to look at all of the NFL games that are happening this week, and I'm basically just going to pick which team I think is going to win each game and which team I think is going to lose, and there's going to be 3 little twists. I'm going to have a lock, which is basically if that team that I'd say is going to win loses, I'll have to do some kind of punishment or something. We'll kind of figure this show out as it goes week by week. I'm mostly doing this show because I want to get back into football, because in the past I was very passionate about it. I really loved it. And truth be told, my team has been sucking the last couple of years, so I haven't been watching. But this year there's a chance that they make the playoffs, and I'm insanely excited about it. So to kind of reignite my passion for football, this is the show that I'm going to be doing. And the 2 other special kind of switches up that I'm going to do to kind of make this a little bit more interesting. We're also going to have one upset every week where I have to pick a team that is expected to lose and put them over a team that's obviously expected to do a little bit better. And then I also need to do a must win by 2 scores. And I'm going to also mix it up a little bit by having to say exactly how much points I think that team is going to win by. So that being said, I have the entire schedule for this upcoming week of football. Starting tonight, we have Thursday night footballs. It is going to be the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Cowboys. And I'm just going to run through the list and say which teams I think are going to win and give a brief explanation. I'm going to go ahead and say I'm expecting week 1, week 2, week 3 to be really bad because, like I said, I haven't been into football that much lately, and I'm mostly picking these based off of which teams were good about 2 years ago. So if I have any of these completely incorrect, I apologize. I will say, I did do a little bit of research because for some of these teams, I was looking at them and I was literally like, I don't think I can name a single player on these teams. So I did do a little bit of research, but that being said, let's dive into it, shall we? So starting off with Thursday Night Football, we have the defending Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, facing off versus their division rival, the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's very obvious. I think that the Eagles are going to win this game. I'm hoping it's a high-scoring game and that Jalen Hurts manages to throw 7 touchdowns and maybe run 1 in. I have him on fantasy football, and that'd be really convenient for me. But that being said, the Dallas Cowboys didn't really do anything over the offseason to really boost their team at all, and they literally just lost their best defensive player against a team that has an incredibly strong offense. I think that the Eagles are definitely going to sweep them with this game. Then we have tomorrow night, Friday Night Football, which is weird. That's gonna really throw me off. The Chiefs versus the Chargers. I think, once again, the winner here should be a little obvious. I do think it's a little more but the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm going to give them the W this week. They hadn't had really any issues all throughout offseason. In fact, they've been relatively quiet, which is a good thing because they were in the Super Bowl last year. So for the most part, they didn't need to do any crazy trades or any crazy, dropping players. Nobody is retired, which I'm actually shocked by. I was expecting Travis Kelce to retire. But that being said, I think the Kansas City Chiefs just are going to have the edge over the Chargers, who still look relatively good, but the Chiefs were the number 2 team in the league last year, and the Chargers I just don't think are that good. But now, moving on to Sunday, we have the Miami Dolphins versus the Indianapolis Colts. I'll be honest, this was one where I had to do a little bit of research. I didn't know who the Colts quarterback was, and apparently it's Daniel Jones. So I'm going to give it to the Dolphins. That being said, I do think Daniel Jones has the potential to do solid later on in the year. I do think that he showed a lot of sparks of greatness in New York with the Giants the last couple of years, but I think that he's just really not fitting into that scheme. So I'm hoping that throughout the year, Daniel Jones gets a little bit better. But as of week 1, we have the Miami Dolphins, who, for the most part, their offense is still the same, and it's a pretty dominant offense. So I'd be surprised if they don't come away with a win on this one. Then we got the Panthers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just remember that the Panthers last year were so bad that they literally were selling tickets to their games for $7. And because of that, I do not think that the Panthers are magically going to be better this year. I know they have Bryce Young, who showed a lot of talent last year, and they might have potentially done things in the offseason to better that team. But I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars are just going to have the edge over them just a little bit, because the Jacksonville Jaguars, truth be told, aren't that great either. But I do think that Trevor Lawrence is kind of a big year. He really has to step up and do something good, or there's a chance that his time in the NFL is going to come to a very quick, abrupt stop. So I'm going to have to root for the Jacksonville Jaguars for this one.
Future editing, Blake here. I accidentally completely forgot to record this, but I believe that versus the Jets and Steelers that the Steelers are going to win. But as low-key the biggest Aaron Rodgers hater, I would find it absolutely hilarious if the Jets won. But I'm sticking with the Steelers.
Then the next game, we have the Arizona Cardinals versus the New Orleans Saints. And I'll be honest, I don't think I can name a single player that's currently on the New Orleans Saints. I think that they might still have Chris Olave. Maybe they might have Alvin Kamara still. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, that team gets injury-ridden incredibly badly. I don't think they have a particularly good quarterback. And they're playing against the Cardinals, who I know for the most part at least has a relatively solid wide receiver number one, Kyler Murray, who's relatively good. They have a defense that's pretty stellar. So I'm going to have to give this one to the Cardinals. Then the next game, we have the Giants versus the Commanders. I personally am actually really impressed with how much better the Giants got over the offseason. I think the fact that they went from having 0 good quarterbacks to now having 3 is kind of hilarious. But I do think that the Commanders last year going into the end of the season were looking incredibly hot and had like a really good streak going. I think that Jaden Daniels is absolutely incredible. So I'm going to give the edge to the Commanders here. I think that they're going to win. Alrighty, and then the next game, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers versus the Atlanta Falcons. And I'll be honest, the Atlanta Falcons are a team that I'm very unfamiliar with. I think that they have Drake London, who's relatively good. And I think they have Kyle Pitts, who is all right. From my understanding, he kind of lets people down in fantasy from week to week. So I'm not entirely sure about if he actually is good. But on the other side, we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have consistently relatively solid wide receivers. We have Mike Evans, who's probably the most consistent wide receiver of all time. This guy hits 1,000 yards every single season. And we have Baker, the fucking man, Mayfield. I'm going to have to give it to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Then we have the Bengals versus the Browns. This game looks like it's probably going to be potentially painful. I love Joe Burrow, and I think that he has some solid wide receivers, and I think that the offense could potentially work some magic here. But that being said, their defense sucks ass. The Bengals defense sucks ass. So it's going to be a close game, unfortunately, but I am overall going to say I think the Bengals will win week 1. Okay, and the first one of my specialty picks, here's going to be my luck. And as a Patriots fan, we have the Patriots versus the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to give it to my Patriots. I think Drake May is going to have a relatively solid week. I think that there's obviously a lot of kinks that they're going to need to rough out, but they have a relatively solid defense, and they have a young, up-and-coming offense that looked relatively good in preseason. I think Drake May is going to surprise a lot of people with how incredible he is this year. I'm going to go ahead and lock in the Patriots are beating the Raiders. And then the next one, we have the 49ers versus the Seattle Seahawks. And I'll be honest with you, I am not entirely sure who all is on the Seattle Seahawks anymore. I don't know who their quarterback is. And I'm going to be also more honest with you. I don't know who any of their defensive players are. Their offense, I think, still has DK Metcalf, maybe potentially Tyler Lockett. But the Seattle Seahawks are a team that usually will have their ups and downs throughout the season, and they'll randomly have 4 or 5 weeks where they're incredible and then kind of be in the middle of the pack the entire rest of the season. So I don't really know what to expect here. But that being said, I do know what to expect with the 49ers, and it's at least a solid performance from everybody playing, so I'm going to give it to the 49ers. For the next game, we have the Titans versus the Broncos. And once again, these are two teams I'm not very familiar with, but I do believe that the Broncos have one of the best defensive backs in the league, and Bo Nix looked relatively solid. So I'm going to have to give it to the Broncos. Please tell me Bo Nix is actually the name of a player that exists, and please tell me he plays for the Broncos, because I said that out loud and immediately was like, that's a made-up name. I don't know. And now for the next one, this is going to be my upset. I don't actually know how much of an upset this is. I just think that Michael Parsons just got traded to the Green Bay Packers, and it's Green Bay Packers versus the Lions. I think that the Green Bay Packers are going to pull off a win here, and I think that it's going to shock a decent bit of people because I'm pretty sure the Lions are expected to be one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the league this year, and I think that the Packers are gonna kind of surprise them a little bit. Alrighty, the next game we have the Texans versus the Los Angeles Rams. I personally am a really big fan of the man, the myth, the legend, Puka Nacua. I think that he can do no wrong, and I think that he's going to have an incredible season this year. And on the other side of the field, CJ Stroud is pretty awesome. Nico Ball is pretty awesome. But, is it Nico Ball or Nico Bell? I think it's Nico Bell.
It's Nico Collins. It's Nico Collins. I want to correct myself. I was thinking of Tank Dell and Nico Collins, and I accidentally mixed up their last names. I'm sorry.
Either way, they're also pretty awesome. This is going to be a close match, but I personally think that the Rams have the little bit of the upper hand here, so I'm going to give it to the Rams. Alrighty, now for Sunday Night Football, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Buffalo Bills. And personally, I know I'm a Patriots fan. I do kind of root for the Bills a little bit because they have yet to win a Super Bowl, and I kind of would like it if, you know, the Patriots aren't going to be the number one team in their division this year. The Bills are incredible. They've been doing incredible, and this is probably one of the last years where they really have a great, strong shot at winning the Super Bowl. So as much as I do think that the Bills are going to have a good season, and I think that overall they're going to have a great year, I think that's going to start off with them being defeated by the Ravens on Sunday night. I think that the Ravens always do good in prime time, and I think that Derrick Henry is going to rush for at least 2,000 yards this year, because in an interview, somebody made a promise that if he got 2,000 yards, he can be in an Adam Sandler movie. And I think that that's a man who loves a challenge and a goal to aspire to get, and he's going to do it. I think Derrick Henry is that guy. And then for the last game of the week, this is going to be my last special one. I think that the team that's going to win by 10 plus points is going to be the Minnesota Vikings versus the Bears. I like the Bears. I think that the Bears have some strong suits, and I think that later in the year, there's a solid chance that they're going to have kind of like an uphill streak, and they're going to end the year off really well. But that being said, Caleb Williams was the most sacked quarterback last year, and even though they did a couple of changes during the offseason, he still seems like he doesn't know when to let go of the ball, and I personally love Caleb Williams. I want him to have a really good, successful career. I think that he's iconic, and I think that he has the potential to be the moment. But that being said, as of right now, they're going against, obviously, a young, inexperienced quarterback on the other side of the ball with Minnesota, but they're going against arguably the best wide receiver in the league in Justin Jefferson, one of the best tight ends in the league. I think that the Minnesota Vikings are going to win it, and I think that they're going to win it by 13 points. I think they're going to win by a touchdown and 2 field goals. But that being said, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. Next Thursday, I'll be posting another update video for this, where I will go through which of these picks I got right, which ones of these picks I got wrong. If I have to do a punishment for my lock, I will figure out a punishment, and we will do the predictions for next week. And then hopefully, if everything goes right, I'll be doing this series for the next 21 weeks. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that being said, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for coming by and checking it out. I love and appreciate you guys so much for watching. And if you liked it, feel free to like and subscribe. And I'll hopefully see you guys in the next one. Peace out. Out.